Okay, hello. Now, I am going to today, first period, we are going to be talking about the Holocaust first, and it'll probably take us about 20 minutes or so. And then after that, we're going to begin looking at some of the different parts of World War II that begin in 1939. So to begin this, what I'm going to ask is that you're going to get your notebook out, and we are going to be writing in the notebook when we talk about the Holocaust today. So go ahead and get that out. I'll give you 30 seconds or so to get yourself prepared. I'm going to put the first slide up now. What you need to do is, in the notebook, just copy the heading. Just copy the term, the Holocaust, and then I will give you further instructions on what to do. So let's go ahead and get that going. Okay, now what I want you to do is you have the title called the Holocaust, and I'm going to give you 1 minute for you to write down any prior knowledge that you may have about this topic. And it can be anything that you are pretty certain is correct. Since I'm not there, there's certain things I can't really screen to say whether they are true or not, but let's try to stick with what we call the facts. So take 1 minute starting right now to go ahead and write what you can. Okay, time is up. Now stop writing. Now what you're going to do is I'm going to give you about the next 5 minutes for you to discuss with people around you, and if you need to get up and move around the room, you can. Now, what I'm going to try is, and I'm not sure how many facts you came up with right now, but we're going to shoot for the number 10. So what I would like for you to do is to see if you're able to get at least 10 different facts that we have from the people in the class and start compiling a list of some of the things that we know about the Holocaust. Okay, so 5 minutes, and whenever the 5 minutes is up, you can go back to your seats, and then we will get started. So at this point, go ahead and stop the video, and then when everybody's done in 5 minutes, restart it. So go ahead and stop. Okay, now hopefully we're able to get 10. Like I said, I'm not there to really hear some of the things that you're thinking about or things that you know. But what we're going to do now is that we're going to move to a video that I have on the Holocaust, and the video is about 10 minutes, and this explains a lot of the things that some of you may already know, but it's a nice refresher for what the Holocaust is about. So we will watch this. It's 10 minutes, and then when we're done, we will kind of talk about some of the different specific things about the Holocaust, and then move on to the beginning of World War II. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch it.
Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party promoted the idea that German people were superior to others. This prejudice against other people led to many of the horrific acts of the war.
What is prejudice? Have you ever experienced it?
Prejudice, in my opinion, is hate. It's the same thing as hate. Hate for one person or a group of people.
I guess it would be that you're judged for something before someone actually knows about you and what your beliefs are and your personality.
I think people hate because they don't always have the whole story. They don't take the time to think about other people and think about the other side of a situation.
I think people hate because they're brought up that way. You really take on what your parents teach teach you. When my father came to work one day, there was a sign saying, "Go home, foreigner."
I think the reason for hatred is jealousy. That reason people hate is because they're jealous of someone else.
Prejudice is racism or judgment, stereotypes against a specific group of people.
People look too much at the outside and those differences than the fact that we're all people. You know, we're really not different.
Only a short time after Adolf Hitler became the German Chancellor, head of the government, in 1933, he created new policies to purge German culture of what he called bad influences. The most savage of Hitler's policies was his program to kill all people he judged racially inferior. The isolation and mass murder of these people has become known as the Holocaust.
That's what you see is
Hitler targeted Slavs, Gypsies, the mentally ill, and other non-Germanic people, but the Jews were at the top of his list. Why do you think Hitler wanted to destroy Slavs, Gypsies, Jews, and the mentally ill? Hitler had special concentration camps built and used trains to transport his millions of victims there.
They lined us up for a march to the railroad station. The railroad station in my city was dumped already, so we had to walk I don't know how many kilometers. We came to the station and there we saw the big boxcars. No windows, nothing. Big doors opened up. They shoved us into those cars. They didn't count how many. Those are called cattle cars. Why are they called cattle cars? That were used to transport cattle, cows, and horses.
Once inside the camps, mothers and fathers were separated from each other and from their children. Everyone was forced to wait outside until the Nazi guards could decide who to kill first.
When we arrived on the station, this lady we find out is Auschwitz, and we saw people in zebra clothing. We don't understand what this is. And the lady we saw the SS open the doors from the cattle cars, and they start to yell, everybody, out, out. All the women left, the men right. So you don't know what to do with your mother in here. You run in what's really a hell. This moment I never forget. My brother was sent to the men's camp. My mom, who was at that time 46, she was sent to the left. I found myself at the age of 16 all alone.
The Jews were forced to do slave labor in the camps. With little food and even less sleep, they worked to support the Nazi war machine. Sometimes when there was little to do, the Nazis would make their prisoners perform meaningless tasks to control them. What reasons do you think the Nazis had for wanting to control their prisoners?
In the morning, they woke you up really early, and they counted you. They made you roll call. You stood there for hours. It was called a bell. You stood there. They counted you and counted you. Why count you? There was no place to escape. You were surrounded with 2 rows of electric wires, guards around and around. After counting us and giving us the little food, they chased us to do different jobs. Every day you did so. They took, let's say, 50 women, 100 women. You go sweep the street. You go clean the bathrooms. You go do this. You go do that. It was all kind of work. Was digging holes. Some, like I was working later on digging pits. But later we found out what we are doing. That is pits for people who they get them and the crematorium could not burn. So they brought here hundred of bodies, and later was they burned them. So this was the work.
the Nazis killed millions with deadly efficiency. When they were no longer able to work, prisoners were marched into gas chambers. Their bodies were burned in crematoria, or vast furnaces, and their ashes were scattered.
Crematoria were going day and night. These gas chambers were going day and night. But during the day, there was just black smoke coming out that you saw, and when the wind was in the direction of the camp, the ashes fell down mixed with small splinters of bone.
Though the Nazi forces were a powerful military force, the Allied forces of the United States, France, Britain, and the Soviet Union were stronger. Allied troops cut through German defenses in 1945 and began making their way into Germany. As the Allies moved deeper into German territory, the Nazis began destroying the death camps. What are some of the reasons that the Nazis would want to hide evidence of the death camps?
The camps were shut down long before the arrival of the Red Army, and there the Germans had time to manicure the grounds a little bit and to try, if not totally successfully, to erase traces of killing centers that had been established at these locations. Not only was it the question of destroying the buildings or other facilities, but also of what to do with the labor force that was in these camps that had not been gassed and which had to be barged out over long distances to some other place.
By April of 1945, the Nazis were unable to hide the large-scale evidence of the camps. Allied soldiers started finding them as they began penetrating Nazi territory.
Looked like a castle, the Smarthausen, and the walls were 10 foot high. There were electrified fences to keep the inmates from trying to get out, and some of them were so weak they couldn't get out even if they didn't have guards. They couldn't. They were starving to death. We'd heard rumors that there were concentration camps, that there were prisoners there, but we didn't expect to see human skeletons. And we still can't fathom how people could look so thin and be alive. The people that were able to just hug us and kiss us, their faces were thin and haggard from lack of food. In most cases, they were all starving.
Disease, starvation, and dehydration were so commonplace in the camps that many prisoners could not even walk. Allied soldiers gave people food and water and did the best they could to improve living conditions. But there was nothing the soldiers could do about the horror and death the prisoners had been forced to live through.
He was thinking, you are free. A bird go out from the cage, how she fly free. This how was with us. We was jumping. We could not walk much, but we was jumping in the place. Each one was kissing. Look, now somebody started to yell, where's my mother? Where's my father? Now start the tragedy.
The Nazis wanted to destroy all people they thought were different, but they failed. The Holocaust is a reminder of how inhumanity can reach deadly proportions, and a warning that it should never happen again. Did you know former President Dwight Eisenhower was...
Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to go to the notebook. There were a couple slides that I emailed you about, and what we're going to do right now is that we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the different elements of what occurred with the Holocaust. Okay, so to start off, most people, you automatically think of the Jews whenever you think of the Holocaust. It's estimated there was about 11 million executed or exterminated during the Holocaust. Jews make up about 6 million out of the 11. The other 5 million are made up of a lot of different groups. Slavs from Central and Eastern Europe. These are the people that would have been part of like Czechoslovakia at the time. Poles, Jews of course are included in there. Mentally and physically handicapped, but even people that were had some sort of mental disease or physical ailment, alcoholism, homosexuality, all of these are people that would have been deemed unfit by the Nazis and subject to death in the concentration camps. Now, another thing that I think a lot of people think that the Holocaust happens during World War II. It actually begins way back in right around 1933 is when you start seeing the Nazis targeting these people that are not what they consider to be the perfect master race. The Aryans is what they refer to the Germans as. So even as far back as 1933, we start seeing Jews being excluded along with other groups. Now, in 1935 is where things really begin to get more intense for the Jews. The Nuremberg laws are passed, and Jews lose all their German citizenship. And also at that point, you start seeing Jews being targeted and excluded within German society. Now, continuing along, in 1938, we have Kristallnacht, which is known as the Night of Broken Glass. This is a night when the Nazis, the stormtroopers, they attack Jewish businesses, they break in, they burn them, they attack Jewish homes, and it's called Night of Broken Glass because the number of store windows that were broken during this event. Now, starting in 1939, Jews were given the opportunity to leave Germany, and that seems like not that big of, you kind of think like, okay, well, they had the choice, why didn't they leave? Jews, although they're not native to Europe, they've been living there for thousands of years. Like, they pretty much migrated there, in the early hundreds, and they've been living there since. So they've been around for 1,000 years and more than that. So you're pretty much asking a group of people to leave what they consider is their home, and many Jews refuse to do that. They don't have any idea of what's going to be happening when it comes to the Holocaust. So a lot of them end up staying, and these are the ones that eventually get rounded up. And there's a group called the Eastern Gruppen, which are the troops of the Nazi Party that are given the responsibility of rounding up the Jews in Germany and Austria, Czechoslovakia, and in Poland. And these are the people who round them up and send them off by rail car to Eastern Europe. Most of the concentration camps are not in Germany. They are mostly in Poland. That's why when World War II is coming to an end and the Allies are starting to squeeze Germany down, it's not the U.S. who finds the concentration camps, it's the Soviet Union who finds them, because they're the ones coming in from Eastern Europe, getting into Poland first. So, that's kind of what's happening, but it begins really right around 1935, and then as the war starts turning against Germany, they begin to realize that, okay, we're gonna be found out that we have these concentration camps. So they actually begin to kind of clean up the mess that they've made. And there were times, kind of one of the things to talk about is with FDR, who's the president. There are times that the Allies are flying missions, and I'm talking mostly about Britain and the United States, that we're flying missions over Eastern Europe. We're bombing German cities, and there were several accounts when American and British pilots were flying over Eastern Europe, and they reported seeing these camps. And the thing was, people kind of questioned what the U.S. does. We don't really do a whole lot in response to it at that time because we were so focused on the planned invasion of France with D-Day, and plus we had the Japanese we were fighting as well. So some people give us a lot of criticism for not acting faster and thinking that we could have saved millions of lives if we would have went after the concentration camps early, but we weren't really sure what they were, and then the Soviets would be the ones who really discover them, and then they alert the British and the Americans. Then as the war is closing down, then we send out our representatives to actually begin finding these concentration camps. Okay, now another thing that people kind of always talk about it, well, how is something like this possible? How can you have the mass slaughter of 11 million people? Well, as you know, throughout the year we've talked about the Jews several times, and they've always seemed to be a group of people that can never find a home. They've always been scapegoats in many different events throughout history, whether it was the bubonic plague or the pogroms that occurred in the 1800s in Russia and Austria. So, kind of the idea that's becoming very popular, and this kind of comes out of the idea of Charles Darwin and social Darwinism, is that the Germans truly believe that they are the master race, the Aryan nation, and they see the Jews as an inferior ethnic group, and to them it's their responsibility to rid the world of the inferior race. So the idea of the Holocaust seems extreme, but people they had the idea of this is based on science and it's based on survival of the fittest, and also the fact that there's huge amounts of propaganda being given by the German Nazi Party to help persuade the Germans. Not all Germans are Nazis, so some Germans had friends who were Jews, but they were being pretty much persuaded to be against them. And if you were found to be a friend of a Jew and you didn't renounce your friendship with them, then you could become a target just as easy as a Jew could. So pretty much the Holocaust, it's a massive event, and there are courses that devote entire months, years, a year to just the Holocaust itself. But pretty much for us, the idea is understanding the root cause is Hitler's want of a German state, and you can't have a pure German state if you have different ethnic groups within there, and the Jews just happen to be one of the larger groups that Hitler's going to end up targeting. Okay, so that's pretty much going to finish what we're doing here with the Holocaust, and if you have any questions, please keep them, and I'll try to answer them when I come back. And we're going to start this period, and we should have a little bit of time this period, and this is going to take us over to the next period as well. We're going to begin looking at World War II and some of the things that are happening there. So I'm going to exit out of the PowerPoint. Okay, now what you're going to get is there's a handout, and I'll show you the digital copy of it right here. Okay, now the handout is called Phases. It's called Phases of the Conflict. Now you're going to get a hard copy of this. Okay, I'm just going to show you this ahead of time. So when you get the hard copy, what you see, it's broken down in a chronological order of the events of World War II. And it starts with Blitzkrieg 1939-1941, and then it pretty much goes in order through some of the different events that are happening. And in here you'll see there's some battles, but overall it's kind of it's a year by year. These are some of the bigger things that are happening in World War II. Now for you, what you don't see on here, but with your packet on page 4, I provided you an answer blank. An answer bank. Okay, so all the answers for the fill in the blank are there for you. Now, in order to do this, what you need is, hopefully you have the computer out already. If you don't, then we need to get the laptops out. On the wiki space, there is a PowerPoint. Okay, here's the PowerPoint. It is called The Course of War. Now, this is another one of these, you're going to have to go through the PowerPoint, kind of go from the PowerPoint to the Word document, and the answers are here. Now, it's not as direct as, probably what you would hope it would be. It's not word for word, but that's not really the point. The goal is for you to review the PowerPoint and the handout together and fill out the correct answers. And you definitely, pretty much starting now until the end of next period, you're welcome to work together. The only thing I would warn you is, make sure you use your time, because when you are all said and done with the Course of War handout, and you have all the different sections filled out, all the blanks are filled out, then what you're going to do is that you are going to end up having some review questions that I will show you here. So before I move to the review questions, just to kind of review this with you. So here's the PowerPoint. Okay, it's 25 slides, but as you go through it begins to explain what's happening with the war in Europe, and then it also has the war in the Pacific. Okay, so it also brings in Japan and the United States. So you need to use this to fill out the blanks, and I'm kind of on the expectation that you'll all be able to fill out the correct blanks because, like I said, they come out of the PowerPoint. You just sort of have to look into the PowerPoint, read through it, and it helps explain it to you. Alright, so I'm going to exit off the PowerPoint, and I'm going to explain to you the last thing. That way the video can go ahead and be stopped then after I explain this. But pretty much, do the PowerPoint and the handout first, and then finish with the review questions. Now, the last thing is, when you are done filling out the packet, the fill in the blank, then once again you have some review questions. And the thing is, and we've done some of these this chapter. These are, the hope is that you take World War II, and we did the 20s, the 30s, now we're doing World War II. You take the information, which is mostly, pretty low-level identification of filling in the blank, which isn't that hard. But then the questions are there to help you kind of go into it more, all right? Kind of work your way up the thinking ladder, and it's just not simply, the first country invaded was Poland. So these are questions that are going to help you put together the pieces of World War II. And you pretty much are able to use the packet that you are going to complete. And the only thing is here, once again, you need to answer in complete sentences, okay? Complete sentences, I know you think they may be a pain, but they help form full thoughts, and that's what we need to do here. So you have the rest of this period, and you have all of next period, which will be the period 8, to get the packet done and then also get the review questions done as well. And you may work together, but groups can be no larger than 2. Okay, so 2 is the biggest group we're going to do, because if we get bigger than that, sometimes we don't stay on task. Okay, so the review questions, the hope is you get them done this period. If you do not get them done, they are assigned for Thursday. Okay, there's no chapter outline in this chapter, so having a little bit of homework on the outside is okay, since you don't really have anything major due Friday except for the vocab. Alright, so this is also on the wiki space. All the files you need are on the wiki space, so you can go ahead and stop it and go ahead and get to work. Alright, I'll see you on Thursday. Bye bye.